I don't know what I was thinking, but I decided to invest in the stupidest character in Star Rail history. So, let's at least get into a showcase and guide of him so I don't feel that stupid for wasting all my materials. So let's get into the showcase really quick for Misha. Now against this deer in MOC 12, it doesn't do any attacks the first turn, so we can actually get away with not running any sustain, even though our Misha is slightly underleveled and also doesn't have his A4 trace unlocked or his A6. So he's essentially running with 17% effect hit rate, 10% of that is from Pela, and I think maybe he has like 2 substats or something like that, right? On top of that, his minor traces also aren't activated, obviously, because his major traces aren't activated, so his ult is pretty much where we're going to be getting all of our damage, and I think his skill is also maybe like halfway upgraded. So we are going to mop them. I mean, it's such a dumb animation, but anyways, now with Bronya's ult, we're going to get a nice, juicy, multiple bags of luggage. Okay, so let's see how much our toss can do. And okay, 500,000 luggage. 500,000 luggage is actually quite respectable. Okay, now let's just re-up our Misha's turn so we can mop once again. So this Ascended Shadow actually got hit with 3 mops in this wave. Perfect. So now we get our free turn because it's a broken... what is it, MOC buff, and it does help because with that Imbibitor's Lightcone we do have on Misha, we do get that attack bonus and that energy recharge. Wow. Okay, so we're going to save our Pela ult because we don't have a fast enough Pela to get 3 times, so that means that that ult had to be able to kill most of the deer, and it actually did its job. So now these mops just have to, you know, chip it away, and perfect. It would be nice if it died to the basic here so we could take advantage of the Imbibitor's Lightcone, but it would be very, very close, so it's probably safer just to go for the skill. And mop them. Perfect. And now it's into its second phase, so it has none of the debuffs from the MOC buff, so Pela is now going to get a beautiful 3 separate debuffs. We've got our 40% from our ult, 16% from resolution, and our 12% ice res down from her E4. Beautiful. And now Bronya boosts up our Mop Boy for another turn with another ult. Okay, and 1 Mop is going to lead us into 1 skill. Now this is going to do 13 hits because there's 2 enemies, or 3 enemies, right? So it's going to be a 3 plus 10, quick math, 13 hits, and hopefully we can just get enough hits on the deer to break. Because once it breaks, it's going to do a ton of damage thanks to Ranmei. So come on, Bellboy. Come on, toss your luggage. Wonderful. Okay, so that is the 0 cycle for Misha. Now let's get into the actual builds and guide. Really quickly, let's go over the builds I use for this run. That way we can actually get into the guide. So for the Lightcone on Misha, we do have Imbibitor just for the crit rate, really. See? Didn't even unlock those traces for this run. Wasn't even necessary. We do have the Quantum set. That way we can max out the defense shred, even if we can't get those defense drops from the MOC buff, right? E6, very nice. We do have Ranmei with 192 break effect, 132, so she's not fast enough to go twice in the first cycle, so that way we can take advantage of her ult for the entire battle. Right, perfect. So a 4-piece thief with a fleet should be Keel, but I don't have enough break effect on it. Is it E1 for that? Does help us get that 100% defense shred, right? Although it is like 8% too much. Anyways, we do have resolution on Pela, perfect. Even more defense shred, defense shred, defense shred, defense shred. All of our characters defense shred except for Bronya, right? Pela, perfect on Keel and a rainbow set for some reason, not sure why. And we do have our super speedy Bronya here. Does go 3 times in the first cycle thanks to Ranmei. And yeah, and that's why I have to put her on attack and imaginary damage boost and HP. See, none of Bronya's pieces are correct. They're all wrong. But anyways, that's that. Now let's get a quick rundown of Misha's kit. So this basic attack is essentially absolutely nothing. This skill is also just the most basic blast. All it does is just add 1 hit to his ultimate, right? his talent, extremely simple. Every time a skill is used, Misha or ally, he's just going to get one more hit for his ult and regenerate up to 2 energy, depending on what level it is. Now, pretty much everything is Misha's ult. Everything comes down into Misha's ult, right? So, 3 hits by default, right? After that, you pick your target, okay? That they're going to get the first bag of luggage. Then depending on how many hits you've built up based on how many times you've used either Misha's skill or any of your other character skills, then that's how many other bags are going to randomly hit whatever enemies are remaining on the field, right? Now, the base chance, the 20% to freeze the enemy, that pretty much amplified by the 60% effect hit rate that you're going to gain that we're going to talk about later, means that you're pretty much always going to freeze the enemies even if you don't break them, which is pretty nice. Now, while frozen, enemy targets can't take actions. That's quite obvious. Thank you for telling me that, StarRail. Now, after that, they are going to take a little bit of extra ice damage, 30% of Misha's attack. Nothing significant, doesn't really matter. As you can see, all these bonus effects, this is where Misha's kit shines, and every single bonus ability that you get is pretty much tied to Misha's ultimate. Now, the technique really quickly just makes a dimension, which is actually really bad because you might want to make a dimension with like Welt or other characters, for example. So the dimension thing I don't particularly like, especially because it's just increases his first ult, like hits by 2. That's all it does. It doesn't really do anything. So I'm very disappointed that this is a dimension thing, but it's fine. It doesn't really matter too much. It does look pretty cool. Okay, next, let's get into the Eidolons of Misha. So, the first Eidolon, arguably, I don't know if it's the most important, but it's very helpful. Damage-wise, it does give probably the most damage, like amount of damage increase, right? Because you are able to now stack past 10 with Misha. It's worded very weirdly, so it sounds like you can't, but even if you have 10 stacks and you have 2 enemies, you are going to do 12 hits, which is pretty nice. Now, this is my favorite Eidolon. In my opinion, this is his best Eidolon, only if it's paired with Pela. So if your team has Pela or a Silver Wolf, so you can take advantage of the exponential increase that Defense Shred gives you, then I do think this E2 is really good, especially because it's a 3-turn debuff, right? So this is going to help, especially if you're having like a duo DPS setup, although I'm not really sure what that would look like. E3, perfect, just the ult increase, what you want. E4 is going to be a nice damage multiplier increase, although 6% is pretty much just times 10 is just 60, so you're pretty much just going to get 1 extra hit, so this is not too important. This, the skill increase, perfect. The skill does give you a good amount of damage in between your ults, so that's pretty important, although not very. And then this is a pretty nice, in my opinion, the 30% damage is nice, but I think the skill point's actually nicer because sometimes after a couple turns do go by, you do see Misha at like 8 or 9 stacks and you can't get that 10th stack because you just don't have enough skill points. So this E6 is very nice for quality of life and also the damage increase. Perfect. So now let's get into these traces really quick, right? So the first bonus ability, as you can see, actually first, let's talk about how I haven't upgraded these two. The reason why is because I'm not giving Misha my balls, right? I refuse to. I only have 10, and I'm not going to give it to anybody other than Kafka needs a couple, Black Swan needs a couple more, Sparkle will need some soon, Acheron will need the rest. Okay, cool. So, this first one is just going to make the first hit of your ult have an increased chance of freezing, which is nice, does really help, especially if you don't have this one, right, which is going to give you a 60% effect hit rate during your ult, which is extremely important. If you do use Misha, please use this, or unlock it rather, and you do get this nice ice damage on top of it, but you don't get the crit rate, which is unfortunate, right? You only get this 2.7 plus this 4, so you don't get too much crit rate in Misha's kit. Other than that, this dealing damage to frozen enemies is very nice because, like, there's some enemies where it's like, or skills where it's like deals extra damage to frozen enemies, but then you have to freeze them. But Misha can freeze just off the bat with the first hit of the ult. So this is like extremely high uptime, right? So this is very, very nice. And of course, this crit rate and ice damage is very, very nice as well. Okay, perfect. So now it's time for the relics. So if you go for the defense shred route, so if you use Pela, if you use his E2, right, then I think using defense shred, even if they're not quantum weak, is just the best route you can take, right? It's just consistently really, really nice, and especially if you've been playing for a while and you have Sela, for example, a quantum set, everybody should have a good quantum set, right? It's extremely universal, but if you don't, obviously, you can... let's see what these relics things here are. Here we go. So the hunter set is going to be obviously probably his best in slot, tied with, where is it? Pioneer. Where's Pioneer? Is it not here? Why is it not here? Oh, I haven't unlocked it yet. That's right. Okay, so yeah, so the Pioneer set, the one for Dr. Ratio, is also going to be very, very good on him because he does apply the debuffs. And other than that, so you've got the Quantum set, you've got the Ice set, you've got the debuff set. Other than that, you just go for a 2-piece of attacks, and you know, that's pretty much it. Just get some, maybe like a 2-piece Ice, 2-piece attack, or a 2-piece, like a 2-piece Musketeer, 2-piece Prisoner. You know, just attack. Simple. For Misha's Lightcones, I really only recommend 3. So you've got On the Fall of an Aeon, arguably the best one, although it doesn't give you any crit value. That is the only unfortunate part about this Lightcone. But 64% attack and 24% damage is damn good. Okay, now next, if you do manage to have Imbibitor's Lightcone, I do really, really like this one, mainly because that 18% crit rate is extremely important for Misha, because since you have so many hits on the ult, you want an extremely high crit value, right? You want 80, 90% maybe, you know? So this 18% really does help. The increased base attack is nice and does make up for the lack of attack that you gain compared to Aeon. Right, so even if you only get 1 stack from using 1 basic, you just like, you know, toss in 1 basic whenever you can, then you will get that 18%. And actually, that 6% energy regen does come into handy sometimes. I was playing around with it, and it does give you the ult like perfectly, right? Thanks to that 6%, if you basic, of course. Now next, another good option to use, although On the Fall of an Aeon is like the free-to-play option, but another 4-star option would be, for example, like an S5 Under the Blue Sky, mainly just because Misha doesn't get any attack percent in his kit, doesn't get any attack percent traces, doesn't get any attack percent increases, so he does suffer from a lack of attack, so this attack percent's nice, and also that 24% crit rate for 3 turns, you can keep that up relatively consistently, and that 24% is extremely important for Misha, right? In fact, the crit rate is so valuable that if you wanted to, you could even take a massive damage loss and equip this Indelible Promise, and although the break effect's completely useless on him, that 30% crit rate is going to be very, very, very nice. That's like 60 crit value, essentially. It's like a free relic, free crit rate relic. So yeah. Other than that, there aren't too many options that would be very good. Secret Vow is alright, although, you know, it's nothing special, and whatever this thing is, you know, so you will get that 36% attack bonus. Woof woof woof, woof 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 for the bellboy is nothing good. So, yeah, in my opinion, On the Fall of an Aeon, Blue Sky. Imbibitor's Lightcone. Okay, next. When it comes to Misha's teams, there's a couple of teammates that are kind of indispensable, and when I mean a couple, I really just mean one. It's Pela, right? Pela is so good because defense shred when it comes to Misha is extremely, extremely helpful, and the fact that you can equip resolution is extremely nice. On top of that, the fact that you can use her E4 to apply an extra 12% ice res is also a godsend, right? So that on top of Pela being extremely skill point friendly if you want her to be, and she can also not be, right? So you can just go skill and get her ult up. It's really, really, really nice. So other than that, the other best partner is, who would guess? Ranmei. Now, I'm actually having a hard time deciding which one I like better, Ranmei or Pela. I did just say that Pela was the best, although the weakness break efficiency is something that I personally can't live without, because I just don't have any, I don't have that effect hit rate. Major trace. Once you do get that effect hit rate major trace, you don't need to break them to freeze, and if you don't need to break them to freeze, then Ron May's value goes down slightly, right? But the res pen is so good, the damage percent is so good, and of course the weakness break efficiency, paired with of course Misha's ult being one of the highest toughness dealing ults in the game, right? Especially single target, because you can bounce anything that has a bounce ability. If it's on a single target, will always have the highest amount of toughness damage, right? So as for a sustain, I do actually prefer Fu Xuan when it comes to sustain, just because of the crit rate, right? Because you want a high crit rate on Misha. So the 10% crit rate is very, very nice, because if you compare that to, for example, a Ho-Ho, Ho-Ho is usually the ideal partner for everybody. The only problem I have with Ho-Ho is that sometimes getting your ult too early on Misha is actually a bad thing, because you don't have enough time in between your turns to build up your skill points. You usually need about 3 turns, so that way you can skill with Yukong, skill with Pela, skill with your characters, so that way when you do use your ult after the 3rd turn, it's at 10 stacks. But if you get it 1 turn early with Ho-Ho, unless you have like a Sparkle on the team, then it is going to be rough. Now, if you do have Sparkle, then Ho-Ho and Sparkle paired with Misha is going to be crazy, because then you're probably going to be able to get 2-turn ults with Misha, no problem. Yeah, so that's going to be extremely, extremely nice. Now, as for supports, Yukong is a very, very nice support when it comes to Misha, because of the crit rate, right? This crit rate, crit damage is very helpful for Misha, because his crit is just innately low, right? He does get that 30% from his trace, but overall, the crit rate is just such a nice bonus, because the higher you get to 100%, the higher chance you have of getting all 10, of your hits to crit. And if all 10 of your hits crit with Misha, that's how you get those 500,000 hits, right? Well, actually, I guess you would get that by running 3 supports, but other than that, another really, really good support, obviously, is Tengyun. Tengyun does kind of suffer from some of the things like with Ho-Ho. Like, if you get your ult too early, then you do suffer from like not a maxed out ult. Although Tengyun is just Tengyun, and if you can, get enough skills through some turns, you might have to settle for one weaker ult, but for the most part, you are going to have very, very good uptime, especially because now you can run attack boots on Misha, thanks to the speed boost that Tengyun gives the character that uses the ult with Benediction. So there's a lot of benefits that obviously this S tier support can give even Misha. Before we finish up here, I did really quickly want to touch on the effect hit rate requirements kind of for Misha. Not really requirements, because he doesn't actually require any, but kind of just more like the probability for actually applying his freezes and his defense shreds from his E2, right? So really quickly, the base of his ult for the freeze on the ult is 20%. The first hit is 100% base. So let's say that you do get that 60% from his A4 trace after he uses his ult, right? So that means that if the enemy has 30 effect res, that is this 0.3 here, and Misha has 0 substats, so just 60% effect hit rate, then that means the first hit is going to have more than 100% chance to freeze, and then every subsequent hit after is going to have a 22% chance to freeze afterwards, right? So you do have a pretty good chance of freezing both targets. Because you will be doing it so many times, right? So even if you get a split, like 5-5 split, you will have 5 possible times of hitting that 22% chance, which is not guaranteed, but it's pretty good. Now, if you were to run it with Pela, right, and let's say you had a couple of effect hit rate subs that are kind of just thrown in there, right, then this would suddenly be 60 effect hit rate plus that 10% from Pela plus 19 from the average of I think it's about 3.8% per. So that would mean what is it? So that would mean that you would have 89% effect hit rate, and that would mean that every hit has a 29% chance to freeze, right? Which is about 7% higher than our without Pela, right? and without any effect hit rate subs. Now, for the E2 to apply the defense shred, that is a 24% base chance. So really quickly, if it's just flat 0 effect hit rate, the 60% that you gain from the ult means that you will have a 27% chance to apply the defense shred, which is really nice. Now with Pela and a couple subs, that does jump up to 31%. Now, since 26 and 31 is pretty low, right? Even if you can apply it on one of your hits, you want to apply it obviously on an earlier hit, so that way you can take advantage of it for the rest of your bounce hits in the action, right? But when it comes to the actual probability after ult 10 hits, as you can see here, if we have this is the probability without any effect hit rate, so it's just the flat 60% from his own ability, then that means that in 10 in 10 hits, right, if the probability is 27%, that means that you will have a 95% chance to apply the defense shred to your target if you hit it 10 times, right? So you do have a pretty tolerable amount of leeway, especially because it does have the 3 turns of debuff. So even if you can't get it early, it will still have the debuff unless it's super fast for your next ult on Misha. So at the end of the day, was building Misha a mistake? Yes. Yes, it was. And that's just my personal opinion. You might have a differing opinion. You might actually enjoy building Misha and playing with the Bellboy. No foul. No harm, no foul, right? But it's my opinion. Hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight on how you can build the character if you feel like it, if you want to go down that path. I don't know why you would. Yeah. But anyways, like the video. In the comments, any suggestions, any ideas, I appreciate it. Subscribe. Thank you. Adios.